All right, let's get into this. I'm making this video somewhat because I watched a video by a very funny, seemingly talented young woman named Emma Thorne. And her video was entitled 10 Reasons Why I Am Not a Christian. I've seen these videos before. I thought hers was done very well. And there's often, from people who either were Christians or struggle with Christianity, there are valid reasons to struggle. I appreciated her honesty in her video. I thought it was funny. It was thoughtful, but I thought it was inaccurate. It was wrong, obviously, right? So I just thought about, but why am I a Christian? Why am I a Christian? And so I wanted to list 10 reasons why I'm a Christian and not an atheist. Now, some of my points are going to be somewhat of a direct response to certain things that Emma Thorne said in her video. But in general, these are just some thoughts that I have. Some of these will be, maybe you've never heard these points before. Some of them you've heard before. Maybe, I'm sure. Because this is an age-old question. It's a good question. It's understandable. I think in many ways, Christians get offended or judgmental towards people who just say, yeah. And I'll be honest, it's difficult to believe. There's not a Christian who's watching this video now, watching it later, or will never watch it, that cannot say it is not at times difficult to believe what we believe, right? So why would we expect people to just easily accept the truth? And I think some of that is just why I think we get so self-righteous towards people who just don't believe in Christianity. Having said that, let's get into it. 10 reasons, I was about to sound like Mike Tyson, 10 reasons why I am not an atheist, right? Why I'm a Christian and not an atheist. Reason number 1, atheism, it doesn't fix the problems it complains about. It doesn't. Often atheists will ask things like, if there's a God, why is the world so broken? Or why does a good God allow evil and suffering? Those are good questions, 100%. They're good questions. But atheism doesn't fix the problems that it critiques about Christianity. The question is, Christianity allows for these things and doesn't fix them. So I don't agree with Christianity. But here's the problem. If you take God out of the equation, what changes? Absolutely nothing. Science does not fix the problem of evil. It does not answer the big questions in life. It just doesn't. Science does not. As a matter of fact, there is no worldview that offers anything better than Christianity. So okay, fine. You don't have to believe in the God of the Bible or Christianity, but it's not like, what do you believe? What you believe, does that answer all the questions? Does it solve all the problems? Does science somehow solve the problem of evil? Why good things happen? Why bad things happen to good people? Does that happen? Does it solve why a child is born handicapped? Science does not solve. Atheism does not solve any of the problems that it critiques about Christianity. So I would much rather believe in a God who at least gives purpose to suffering than say I'm not believing in a God because suffering exists, but whatever I choose to believe in doesn't change the fact that suffering still exists. At its core, atheism has no solutions. It has no solutions. All right. Number 2, the second reason why I'm not an atheist and why I believe in Christianity is this. In Emma's video, she said she doesn't like the morality of the Bible. And I get it, 100%. Listen, if you're a Christian, we cannot get offended at this. There are crazy things that are in the Bible that you think that even you have questioned. Why would God do this, right? Or in your own life, why didn't God stop this or allow this to happen? I don't blame Emma for that at all. But here's the reality, though, and this is the problem I have. Truth doesn't require your agreement. Like truth doesn't have to make us feel comfortable. Truth is greater than comfort. So just because I don't like something about Christianity or like something about the world, I still have to accept that it's true. Because here's the reality. Whether you like something or not, it has zero impact on whether it's true or not. We don't like cancer, but it's true. Listen, you ever been walking and just trip Or you ever been worried that you're going to fall and trip in front of everybody? You know why? You know why you trip? One, because you're clumsy. Possibly two, because of gravity. So we don't like the fact that gravity exists, but that we have to deal with it. It's a reality. We don't like the fact that death exists, but it's real, right? Truth doesn't wait for your comfort. Truth confronts you. And so, yeah, there are going to be things about the Bible that none of us, if we're all honest, I'm a pastor and a Christian. I don't like everything about the Bible, but it doesn't make it not true just because I don't. All right. Number 3, the reason why I am not an atheist. And this is one of the things that this kind of connects to some things that Emma said and that that people often struggle with. In her video, she made reference mockingly. So, and it was funny. I get it. And she said, a lot of people struggle with, like, she talked about like bears mauling 42 kids and floods and fire and God seems harsh. But here's the reality, right? We only have 2 standards of judgment normally. Like, most people only have 2 standards of judgment, whether it's right or wrong. That's how we think about it. Right or wrong, good or bad, according to our definition of good and evil, right? Here's another category that God has that we don't have. He has holiness, right? There is a moral purity, a moral perfection about God that demands that anything that is evil according to God's standard must be punished. That's the reality. Like, there is no such thing as just like good and evil to God. He processes things from a different category that atheists don't have, that Christians are learning about. It's called holiness. And that holiness is an intensity toward an intense wrath towards evil because his character allows for that. Now, I'm not expecting someone who doesn't believe in God to have that understanding, but that's just, I can't pretend like that's not a functioning category. Justice requires judgment. If people want justice, it requires that. And here's the reality. If God is really holy, right? If there is a God, sin is really serious. And judgment isn't random. It's not random. It's righteous. When these things happen, there's a judgment for things that happen, right? A lot of evil gets done away with. How does science deal with the problem of evil? Science cannot deal with it. Science accepts that just life is life. Or only the strong survive, survival of the fittest is Darwinism, right? What does that mean for humanity? No, one of the things about understanding that God exists is that even though there's evil in the world, the God promises that evil will not only come to an end, but he will bring the right justice to the right people. Science, what does atheism offer in that? Atheism just says, all right, well, it is what it is. And that's not going to fly for someone who lost their child or whose child was caught up, who kidnapped and tortured. That's not going to fly for them. Now, you might say, well, neither does a loving God either. But God never said that those things wouldn't happen. That's the thing people don't realize. God never said, because I'm a good and loving God, I will protect all people from evil, right? I haven't seen this movie because it's not out yet, but the new Superman movie is coming out. And from the trailers, it looks like one of the reasons people are having problems with Superman in the new movie, I could be wrong because I haven't seen the movie. I'm taking it from trailers. One of the reasons people are having problems with the new Superman is because he's picking and choosing when to stop things. Why didn't you stop this? Why did you stop that? Why didn't you stop that? This is the most powerful superhuman being in the planet, and he can't be Now, God could, but God never promises that, though. God never promises that because I'm a good and loving God that I will not allow any evil and suffering to come upon you. Actually, the opposite is true. Because God is not about protecting us from evil, but he's about conforming us to the image of his son, to be like Jesus, right? So when you want to be when you go to the military, there'll be things that they have to teach you in basic training that are very challenging and hard for you to do, but they're preparing you for something. They're training you to be something. God is training us to imitate his son. He never promises that these good things will pass away. So it's not that evil, in science or atheism, evil has no recognition, no reconciliation. There's no reckoning with evil, but in the gospel there is. In God, he says, look, I'm going to reconcile. There's going to be a reckoning with evil. There's going to be 2 reckonings with evil. The first will be my son. I'm going to let my son be punished for all the evil in the world. And then whoever has faith in him will escape. But whoever doesn't, then you're basically going to take the punishment that you rejected, which is God's wrath. It just doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me to be able to say, well, I just got to accept the fact that something happens to my kid. I just can't accept that. All right, 4th reason why. And this is what was said, I think, in her video about miracles. She said something like, she was referring to Jonah. She said, you can't survive in a fish, talking about Jonah for 3 days. Dead people don't rise. And that's 100% true, right? But that's why miracles exist. The whole point of a miracle is that it's just not normal. See, when you hear those statements, most of the people are speaking about them from the scientific lens. We often forget that humanity we're in the age of enlightenment, post-enlightenment period. And that's the scientific method. That's reason over faith. That's logic. That's philosophy. That's science. That's I think, therefore I am. No pun intended. I think, therefore I am. God told Moses, my name is I am. So I think, therefore I'm God, right? That's what we're coming out of. So the scientific method, let's test it. Hypothesis, analysis, theory, right? We're looking at a world that didn't have that perspective. They had faith, and miracles were very important to that world. And believe it or not, they're still very important to this world. But miracles, they're not rational. They're not rational. The question is, are miracles possible? Does science disprove all miracles? If you say yes, you are absolutely being disingenuous, because science itself, in order for it to purport some of its stuff, it has to rely on miracles. The Big Bang Theory has to be a miracle, because there's no way that all of these things just come together. Do you realize that the way that the universe is created, that a slightest deviation from where everything is created would throw the whole universe into chaos? The slightest deviation, the slightest, would throw the whole planet, the whole universe into chaos. Yeah, I find it hard to think that's a miracle in and of itself. It's a miracle. And miracles for us presume that God exists. So if miracles do exist, then we think it's because of God. We don't think it's random acts of chance. The resurrection of Jesus is not what usually happens when people die. So I get it. Dead people don't rise, 100%. But Jesus did. And there's a ton of people that saw him afterwards that testify to that. Science, atheism, offers no perspective on miracles. It offers no reality. People have heard stories of having stage 4 cancer, going to the doctor, and then all of a sudden the doctors are perplexed. What happened? There's no scientific explanation for miracles. These happen often. We just don't talk about them a lot, but they happen often. So if miracles exist, scientifically speaking, then I'm not attributing that to nothing. There's no way. I'm attributing it to the God who allows it to happen. Number five reason why I am not an atheist, right? In the video, Emma Thorne, she points out contradictions and complexity in the Bible. And she starts listing these contradictions, like, did Paul do this, or did that? Did this happen, or did that happen? And they're good stuff. And let me say this. I'm just running through things right now because I'm not mocking her. I thought she did a great job in her video. I applaud what she did. I don't have a problem with people who push back against the God that I serve. You know why? Because that God doesn't. He's genuine. He's patient. He's loving. I wasn't offended at all at her video. But she makes some points about complexity being in the Bible. And you know what I would say? That's exactly what we should expect from a collection of books written over like a 1,500 year period of time. Like, can we just stop for a second and realize what the Bible is? The Bible is written about 1,500 years in span, a bunch of different authors, right? 66 books that are saying things hundreds of years ago, 1,000 years ago, that ultimately come true almost exactly the way they were written from people who there's no way they could have known that was going to happen. There are things that Jesus did that even if he knew this is what I was supposed to do, in order for him to fulfill things that were written in a book a long time ago, it's scientifically, mathematically impossible for him to nail all of those things. How would he know that the Romans would crucify him? How did he know that? Jesus didn't do anything. He didn't go around and say, crucify me, trying to get them to do it. He didn't egg them on. How would the Bible predict the kind of things that would happen to Jesus? How would it predict those things? How would it know that? This book is 1,500 years or so in span. It's written by real people, real life, and real life is just messy. This is what I love about the Bible. The Bible is not sanitized. It's not a book that tries to give you this fake view of the world and this. No, it shows you the people's deepest flaws. It says David was a man after my own heart and then commits a sin that many of us, by God's grace, will never commit, right? It's just a messy book. I'm okay with that. Just because God is a perfect, loving human being, God said, I'm going to work through human beings that are not perfect, that are messy, and 1,500 years apart, find another document written that far apart, that much literature that actually is as cohesive as the Bible. Good luck. You won't find it. The Bible is human and divine, and that's why I like it. That doesn't make it false. It just makes it messy. All right, number sixth reason why I'm not an atheist, but I'm a Christian. Emma Thorne, she said that the belief in Jesus is mostly cultural. Basically, you're born into your belief, the majority of people. That's what she said. Here's the problem, though, with that statement. That's true of every worldview, including atheism. It's not like if you're born into a family of atheists, you're likely to be an atheist. If you're born into a family of Buddhism, you're likely to be a Buddhist, right? That's not unique to Christianity. I always wonder why people say that. That's specific to any belief that people have. We're all products of our environment on some level. But here's the thing that I think is you have to also acknowledge that truth isn't a zip code. There are tons of people who did not grow up in Christianity, did not grow up in it, and all of a sudden, and all over the world, all of a sudden find themselves followers of Jesus. How do people get saved in communist China? Christianity is exploding over there. How do people get saved in the Middle East? These are Muslim countries where you will die if they find out that you rejected Islam. But how are these people becoming believers? Like, where did they grow? That's just that argument. It doesn't make sense. It's true of every worldview. People convert to Christianity from all over the world. Where you grew up can play a role in why you believe, but it's not a determining factor for real. All right? Seventh reason why I am not an atheist, but I am a Christian, is that atheism has no ground for morality. In Emma Thorne's video, she basically says, she critiques God's morality and wonders why a good God does these things, right? But my question would be like, well, why is there morality in the first place? See, here's the problem. Because she said a lot of good things on this point. She said stuff like about, righteousness, and she didn't mention the word social justice, but she kind of alluded to the fact that just, wanting to do good things, like why would God do these bad things and we can do so many good things and such, right? But the reality is, what is the basis for morality? Like, atheism has no basis. If science does not in any way, shape, or form produce morality. Science produces results, quote unquote facts. Science can tell you why this happened, like how this happened, but not why it's happening. It can tell you why it can diagnose what happens in your brain, but it can't tell you why music sounds beautiful to you, right? Why morality needs a foundation. It has to have a foundation. If you say like, well, how do you know what good and evil is if just atheism and there's no God, there's no objective standard of truth? And here's the thing. You could say, well, we can be products of the environment, like the argument I just said. You can grow up in a community, but then where did that community get it from? And then where did the community before them get it from? And then where did them? Do you know that the vast majority of people from around the world, right? The vast majority. Now, you might find some very indigenous tribes that are so isolated from everything that may have some. I've heard places. I've been to India. I've seen things that happen. Listen, I've been to the far reaches of India, places, the Potteru Mountains, places they've never seen Americans before. And you know what I saw there? I saw things like love. I saw things like fidelity. Like hey, she's married to him. Don't do that. That's their child. Don't do that. I saw people defending their children against animals, willing to risk their lives. Like, where does this I saw people be kind and serve other people. Like, where does that come from? Like, where does that come from? Science does not produce that. Atoms, all science is atoms and molecules all coming together to work out but it doesn't produce these types of things. Science cannot produce love. It doesn't produce good and evil. It doesn't produce morality. The fact that there's morality, it matters. If we're just highly evolved animals, there's no objective good or evil. So what is the platform for saying that God is not being good based on what moral standard? That's the problem. Now, again, if you say, well, it's culturally based, we can tell good, but then how do we define what's objectively true? Why do most cultures think murder is wrong? Why do most cultures in the world think adultery is wrong? Why do most cultures think kidnapping a child is wrong? Why do most cultures think that? Many of them haven't been exposed to Judeo-Christian values, or they're not used to Western civilization. There's a reality that God has placed eternity in our hearts, and being made in his image, we all desire justice and good things and righteousness. It's not enough to save us ultimately, but it's enough to make sure that society as a whole is relatively a place that people desire to be. People love their children and want to see their children protected and safe and have good lives no matter what culture they live in. Unless you're one of those people who grew up and you just like kill your kids. I shouldn't have said that because now I'm going to get a strike on YouTube probably. All right. Number eight reason why I am a Christian and not an atheist is that the resurrection best explains the evidence. In Emma's video, she said dead people don't rise from the dead, and she's right. But that's why Jesus, his rising is so earth-shattering. That's the whole point. It's the whole point. This is why Jesus is talked about everywhere. And people are wondering what's going on because he rose from the dead, and many people saw him after that. Yes, dead people don't rise, but that's what makes Jesus' resurrection. And that's why this is why I believe that that Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15 that the gospel, right, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then we are all to be pitied above all things, right? Because it's right, dead people do not rise from the dead. Dead people, and that's why the bulwark of Christianity is not, does the Bible have errors? Why did God kill this whole group of people? Why did he unalive all these people? That's not what the Bible hinges on. My faith is not hinged on whether or not all of the gospel narratives say exactly the same thing with no variation, that there are no errors in the Bible. The Christianity is not hinged on if the Bible's inerrant or infallible. You know what it hinges on? There was a resurrection, that Jesus rose from the dead. That's what it means. So there's either an empty tomb or there's empty excuses for Christianity. We believe the tomb was empty, and there's no reason to prove that it hasn't been. The disciples were transformed by this. These dudes were cowards. Remember Peter? When he was in Jesus' trial, he got asked 3 times, are you with him? And he was like, no. And then he ran off into the wilderness. Said he wept bitterly and ran off into the night. And then this dude becomes like willing to risk his life. One of the boldest people. After that, these people's lives were transformed. Enemies became believers. Paul became a believer, right? These people, the early church exploded because they believed that he rose from the dead. It didn't explode from a scientific understanding of life. Remember, the disciples were like, man, Peter was like, I'm going fishing. And they were like, we're going with you too. Basically, I'm returning back to the life I had. And they saw Jesus again, and it was like, no, this is real. This is a real thing. I just think, and here's the thing. How can we trust science to carbon date something that's millions of years old? We will say science says that this is millions of years old, that the earth is millions of years old. We'll trust science to figure that out. Then why can't it figure out if a dude rose from the dead or not? Why can't it figure out, here's where Jesus was buried, they think, here's all the evidence. Why can't they? We trust science for all these things. In all honesty, they're all miracles. Many people don't realize it. But we can't figure out something simple as this one guy who a lot of people said they saw. Where are his bones? Where was he buried? Why do we find we find the bones and bodies of Egyptian people, pharaohs who've been buried for a long time? Why can't we find the most important person in the world's bones if he really didn't rise from the dead? Maybe it's me. I don't know. All right. 9th reason why I am not an atheist, but a Christian. And let me say this too. I don't expect atheists to watch this and be convinced. And when I say what I'm about to say, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm just being a matter of fact. I don't really care. There's nothing in the Bible that says I have to convince you and prove that God is true. What I'm supposed to do in 1 Peter 3 is always be ready to give an answer for the hope that lies within you. An answer, not the answer that should. No, I'm going to give an answer for the hope. I really don't care. I'm sure whenever I do a video like this, I will get atheists to come on and spam my comment section and come at me as if I'm bothered by the comments that they make. Feel free to do so. Call me whatever you want. That doesn't change anything to me. There's no foundation for atheism and there's a lot of things I'm not even saying. I'm just giving you sort of a quick response to the video that I saw this girl Emma Thorne make. Wonderful video. I'm just responding to. There's a ton of other things that we could go deeper. If I feel like this needs to have a deeper conversation, then I can do that. But there's a lot of reasons why I just don't think it exists. But here's another reason why. Our deepest longings point beyond this world. Here's the reality, and I've alluded to this. We all long for justice, beauty. I mean, we long for these things: justice, beauty, permanence, things the world will never fully give us. Why? Why does someone who grew up in the suburbs of America decide to leave all of that, go to a country that don't even speak that language, just to make it a better place? Science does not produce within people this desire to do good in the world. Science basically says only the strong survive, survival of the fittest, utilitarianism. It's all these other things, right? It's nihilism. It's like, what's the point of? It's just like, no, but there's something in us that says, hey, I want to make the world a better place. Many of the people who have won the Nobel Peace Prize did not believe in God, Christianity, none of that. But they wanted to do good things. That does not come from science. There's nothing that science teaches that makes you think, wow, I want to do this. You may want to discover something in the name of science, but you don't want to change the world in a moral perspective. You might want to show that this scientific discovery is true, but it's just not a reality. And then this is somewhat different than that, but I think there's a lot of flaws with science. I grew up being told there were 9 planets in our solar system. 9. We had even songs about all of them. And as a kid, we used to always laugh at Uranus. Once we knew what anus meant, we used to laugh at that. And I was the type of kid that would always make jokes about Uranus. You know what I'm saying? Or Uranus. I think our teacher made us call it Uranus because we would say Uranus. So it's like, I was told a lot of things about science. I mean, you know what? That's not this video, but I can go deep into all the things that science said were true that were proven not to be true after further, you know? Like, how does science know there's multiple galaxies? How does it know the galaxy is expanding? How does it know that? No one's ever been to Mars, Jupiter, any of these other planets. How do we know the universe is expanding? We just trust that. You know what that is? That's called faith. And if it's expanding, it's a miracle. But how do we know that? Again, it's just like the reason why we hope for things that are greater than what we currently see is because there's something in us. And that does not come from our biology. Molecules and atoms do not produce the kind of moral compass or the kind of curiosity that most people have. Yeah, you got your serial killers here and there. You got some people that are just wilding. But for the most part, I don't think so. The fact that we know that we were made for something else, and I'll just say this is connected to this idea that you were just made for more. The fact that religion exists, like atheism is actually a newer religion. If you look at the history of the world, now again, this doesn't say Christianity is right, but if you look at the history of the world, you will see largely religious people groups, tons of different religions. You will be hard pressed to find, even the Romans. Remember when Jesus was standing in front of Pilate and Pilate said in John 19, well, what is truth? That was the first time you heard a postmodern statement, was actually started back then. But that was Pilate. The Romans had their own pantheon of gods, Jupiter and all these other gods, right? They just had all of them. They had their own pantheon. Greeks had their own. People groups have always believed something great. Now, that doesn't say, well, Christianity is right then. Any religion. Okay, fine. But my point is that atheism doesn't have a long history of being accurate. This is a newer phenomenon that I think is traced more to the post-Enlightenment reality. Oh, we trust science, something that has gotten wrong so many times. When people bring up the problems with Christianity, it's the same 10 to 12 things. Science has way more issues and things that it's proven wrong. And don't get me wrong, I think science is amazing. I don't have a problem with science. I actually think science shows the mechanism in which God works. I don't think it replaces God at all. I think it shows the providence of God, if nothing else. But it definitely doesn't replace the reality of God. But I get it. People are going to believe what they believe. I understand that. All right, number 10. Man, there's so many. I should have did. I might have to do another one of these. I got a lot of these. These are just the softballs. These are softballs. I'm not even going deep yet. These are softballs. But number 10. Atheism has no ending worth hoping for. If atheism is true, then we're just stardust on a dying planet. There's no ultimate justice, no final hope, no meaning. There's none. There's none of that. If that's what it is, it's not. That's all it is. Just sort of your truth and its own myth. And it's like, where's the hope in that? Like, I would even, let's just say Emma's right. Let's just say atheists are right. Let's say they're right. And this isn't Pascal's wager here, but this is similar. Just say atheists are right. Hope is still a real thing. Hope can carry you through impossible circumstances. Hope can change everything. Hope there's science that backs up the reality that having hope and faith and giving thanksgiving in the midst of circumstances, giving thanks, not Thanksgiving like the meal. Obviously, a good meal can change some things too. And I've had too many good meals, as you can see. But the reality is, hope changes a person's brain chemistry that helps them get through things, right? If there's atheism, there's nothing, then there's no real reason to have any hope. But most people would die. They would die way sooner if they had no hope. It's not just scientific advancement. Sure, that's help for sure. But the reason why scientific advancement actually has advanced, why there's more hospitals, more technology, is because people have hope for change. Hope is not a scientific invention. Hope is something that comes from something else deeper within us. And that's why you have throughout the world, people believe in things that are far beyond them. Like atheism has no hope. There's no ending worth hoping for. I would much rather believe in a hope, even if it wasn't true, than say that there's no hope at all, except for what I just see and do in the moment. I think that's insane. No way. Now listen. These were just quick responses to this woman, Emma Thorne's video. Great video. I appreciated her candor, all of that stuff. Great video. This isn't even as deep as I would go on these things. But I do not think in any way, shape, or form. I'm not saying what I said should convince any atheist. Of course not. You know why I don't expect it to? So if you're an atheist, please listen. I'm not trying to convert you. When I say I don't care, I don't mean it in the sense I don't care about your soul. I just mean I don't care if you believe me or not, if you agree. I'm not trying to convert you. I'm just giving a pushback to the atheist, just like you would when you hear these things. Atheism offers no hope. It offers no hope at all, no certainty, no anything. And it doesn't answer any of the big questions of life. And it surely doesn't in any way give better answers than what Christianity does. Yeah, there's suffering in the world. And yeah, God allows that suffering. But God also chose to suffer for the world. There's nothing that science chooses to do for the world at all, except exist. So yeah, there's a lot more that could be said, but it looks like the tape is crazy. I wasn't even going to the tape today, but there's too much going on. Let me creep over here and see what's going on in the tape. Unless this is like a bunch of atheists just attacking me. I just don't got time. I got to go pick up my son. All right, but let's go back. Let's see what we're talking about. Let me catch some of these things right here. It says, yep, here, I see some already. All right, blessing, Lord. Yep, good to see you. Yes, brother in Christ. I don't like snakes multiplied by 1,000, but they exist to my sanity. Yep, I hear that. Doc, hi there. I'm an atheist, and I may not agree with your worldview, but I'm excited to hear a different perspective on the world. Hope you will. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yes, that's why the human body can't survive on another planet, but only a glorified body can take on Mars, like walking your backyard. Yeah. All right. The Bible is an evil book that tells you which people you should stone, including cheeky children. Okay, that's not necessarily true. The Bible is a book that describes a God who intervenes in the lives of very evil people who would kill each other, whether that God existed or not. Let's be clear. Truth giver. Since we're talking about truth giving, let's be clear. We're acting like the only reason why evil exists is because God is it. Well, then how is that? How is the Bible an evil book? Based on what moral standard are you talking about? Because if the Bible isn't an evil book, if there is no, what's the standard of evil? Like, do you think that people wouldn't have killed people if God had to intervene? Like, do you think people would be better with that? I don't think so. I don't think so. Keep in mind, Judaism as a religion, and then Christianity later, Judaism was not born until hundreds of years after Zoroastrianism, Hinduism, and a bunch of other religions in the world. So it's a response to the religions in the world. It is not the cause of the religions in the world. There was evil in all that before God, quote unquote, started Judaism and then Christianity. So I hear what you're saying, but I disagree. Our basis of morality can in fact be explained as an evolutionary advantage to be kind to your fellow man. I don't think so. I don't think it's an evolutionary advantage. I think it's at best, bro, I think it's more of a, what's the word? Not evolutionary. It's a compensatory. It makes sense financially. Like when you say evolutionary, when did that evolution end or begin? Because like there's still human slavery in the world. Like, why does that? We've evolved to what? America didn't end slavery or whatever. I'm using it as an example because people evolved to something greater. It made more sense financially. The Industrial Revolution happened, and then you started getting machines and able to do these things. And these things, people didn't just evolve into something different. People still are racist. They still do these things. So I don't know how you measure evolution as the cause of these things when you could look around the world and see, well, then these people are not evolved at all. Western civilization may have evolved, but that's because we're a country that is based on commerce. We're based on capitalistic gain, and it makes more money. If I'm an organization, why would I hinder these people from buying my product because I want to make money? So I don't believe that evolution can be tied to that. Too many scientists don't agree with that. So an atheist can't say slavery is bad if they don't believe the objective morals of the Bible? No, they can. But the question is not, do you think slavery is bad? The question is, where do you get the moral compass from? That's the whole point. We're talking about if atheism, if there's no God, it's only science and there's only these things, science does not produce these types of realities. They produce atoms and molecules can function in a certain way, but they don't teach us what's good and evil. We don't understand what good and evil is. There has to be an objective morality that has happened. And it's an objective morality that many people have throughout the world. Now, you don't have to agree with me. That's fine. I don't expect you to. But you cannot just say because you think that no, you have to, first of all, give scientific evidence of that. There's plenty of people that don't give scientific evidence for that. And how about North Korea? Absolutely no religion allowed, but there are Christians there. There are some in prison, some hanging in plain sight. I agree with that. So I figured this is what it was going to be. Whenever, I don't know what it is. I'll give you atheists their credit. I will give you guys your credit. When atheism is a topic, atheists will find your channel. I don't even know, you probably have never watched a video from me, but somehow you were alerted that atheism was a topic, and so you're all in the comment section. I appreciate that. I'm not offended at all. But I don't have time to answer all of these because I have to go pick up my son. But let's hit a couple more. That's how common moral values develop through culture. They help the community of social animals survive. Sure they do. But my point is, though, that how does that happen all over the world, though, Doc Basil? How does that happen? How does an indigenous people group in a nation that's never been exposed to Western values or what you would call the world have some of the same values? I don't know if you've been all over the world. I've been to different places in the world. I've been to areas in India and other countries in Bolivia where these people don't have access to the things that we understand. They don't have access to the science of these different things, but they love their children. They love them. How do you know that? How do you just evolve into that? What's the process of evolution that changes morality? Why is there still evil in the world? There's so many questions that science, you just can't answer. Why would I take on ancient law codes of a God that can't even obey its own moral nature? Why would I take on ancient law codes of a God that can't even obey its own moral nature? I'm not sure if I understand the question analogy. Are you saying who can obey its own nature? God? God? Are you saying God or the people that believe in God? So of a God that can't even obey its own moral nature. So the law, if you're talking about the Mosaic law, the Old Testament, the law was not written it was written to expose sin. Like the law exposed human nature, right? So it would be, this is a stupid example, but it would be something like this. I don't know what you look like, but say an analogy. I don't know if you're a man or a woman. Let's just say you have a stain on your shirt and you just didn't see it. You put on a shirt and you didn't see it, right? And then you go to a mirror and all of a sudden you realize, oh, wow, especially when you turn on the light. Like you go in the mirror, you can't see it. You turn on the light to make sure you're good. You're like, wait a minute, what is this? And you realize you have a stain on your shirt. That's what the law was. The law of God was first of all, in the culture that the Mosaic law was given, I don't think people realize what the world was like when God gave the law. People don't realize how evil and how violent the world was before Judaism. When Egypt was enslaved for 400 years, there was no Judaism. There was no moral law. There was none of those things. When the law was actually given to humanity through the Israelites, through what we call Judaism, it actually brought sanity to a world. It was a crazy world. We're thinking how the world is now and thinking it was like that back then and somehow God messed it up. No, I don't think so. I don't think he pays attention to chat. He's just discussing his thoughts. You may not get a response. Well, I guess prove that wrong. I do pay. I don't always look at the chat because I sometimes I don't want the videos to be too long. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's all the same old apologists. Yeah, it's all the same old atheists. It's the same thing. Atheists have no new arguments. It's the same stuff. Honesty and analogy. It's the same stuff. And if I'm being honest, there's no hope in atheism. There's no hope. At least I would rather die with hope, even if I'm wrong, than to live as if there's no hope, just to prove that I'm right. I'm not even worried about that. There's no evidence proving the resurrection. It's another case. Yep, well said. But so many people disagree with you, bro. I think that statement has no evidence to that statement. It's just not even true. Doc, I appreciate you, bro. Thank you, man. I appreciate you. Black guy defends biblical slavery. Oh, ironic. Man, you folks don't even listen. I'm not defending slavery. You obviously, this is your first time watching my videos. I'm not defending biblical slavery, but slavery biblically was not the same thing as chattel slavery in America. They had a different system. If you owed someone money, you were enslaved to them until you paid it off. It was just the nature of how they did things. America, the world as we know it, went through a lot of different systems, economic systems, before we got to this place. And that's why there's capitalism, there's socialism, there's communism, there's a bunch of different things but it wasn't always, it were just different ways. The world was trying to figure out, how do we get from each other and give to each other so that we can do these things, right? So, all right, let me see. All right, I'll look at a couple more of these. This is all atheists in here. I love it. I knew that. It's so funny how you guys get that notifications. You guys don't follow my channel at all, but I love it. I'm not an atheist either, because atheist is their term, okay? I'm entirely disinterested in theirs, since I'm not in a religion, and I resent being handled a label that is meaning. Well, I'm sorry. Sorry, Cecil. I didn't come up with the term. I didn't make up. That's the term that most likely is described. I don't want to be called cisgender because that's what people say, so it just happens. We can't find the bones, so must have resurrected, LOL. No, in analogy, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Let's be clear. No one is trying to disprove atheism. No one's trying to disprove science. No one's trying to disprove Islam. No one's trying to disprove Buddhism. But everyone is trying to disprove Christianity. So you mean to tell me that all the efforts given to Christianity, to disproving it, which would blow so many things out of the water, no one's been able to find the bones of a man that everyone believes exists? Let's be clear. No one's debating whether he existed. No one's debating that he died. Many people aren't debating that he was crucified. There are actual non-Christian evidences of these things occurring. And no offense to you, I don't know your intellectual capabilities, but there are people much smarter than you and me who have studied these things that at least come to those conclusions, that at least recognize that. With all the trust that you or other people have in scientific evidence that can say something happened millions of years ago, so you will trust that the universe just came together, and you don't think that requires faith. So I'm supposed to laugh at the fact that because they couldn't find one man's bones, but they can tell me that the world was created millions of years ago, that the earth is millions of years old. I'm supposed to be okay with that, but then say, hey, if you can't find the bones of a man who resurrected, oh, it's just LOL? No, come on. Come on. I think you're probably sharper than that. I think you're sharper than that. All right. I got to go pick up my son. I'm just reading through. Let me see. Yeah, and I get it. I get it. This is what I expect from people. And I get it. I'm not offended at all. I appreciate you all being in here. I would give you more press time, but I do have to pick up my son. We all got to get our hair done. We're getting shape ups and stuff like that. I love this one. Another believer who doesn't know what he's yapping about. Criticizing a thing for not being what it doesn't claim to be is kind of dumb. Science makes no claim. Why don't you know this? Science as itself doesn't make claims, but people who believe in science do, bro. So I'm not talking about science. I'm talking about people who believe in science over Christianity. You're making the claim. You're making a claim. Whenever you say something is not true, like Christianity, then you're making a claim that what you believe is true. How are you not understanding that? That's just a bottom line. If you think that this is not true, then what you think is true is actually true. So if you think, well, I believe in science, and again, keep in mind, I was responding to Emma Thorne's video. I wasn't talking to all atheists. I was responding directly to a person who I thought was a good video. So I just think some of the logic that you're bringing up, fam, is just not even legitimate. But I get it. This is what we have to do, right? This is it. Amen, Brother Kurt. Who does not believe in nothing to me, my faith is not in man, but in God, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I'm not worried about that. I will have to rewind from this from the top. All right, Brandon, you do that, everyone follows something or someone. Look at stand culture. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. See, Jesus is hope on a carrot with a stick. You know what? I would rather have hope on a carrot with a stick than say that there's no carrot and stick at all. I would much rather have that. Much rather have that. Let me see. What else is here that I can look at that I think is worth. Okay, yeah. I love this. I like this dude. I think the Uyghur algorithm also made to make us laugh. This guy's arguments are a good example. 100%, brother. I'm glad I was able to bring some joy into your life. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Sorry, Kurt. There are a lot of us, and there are a lot of us who believe in Christianity. I'm not sure what you're getting at, but all right. Anyway, I appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel. The comments just keep going and going. These are mostly from people who disagree. I got to put this up here. I love these kind of critiques. It says, because he is a regular Joe means that he has no business stating his own opinion on his own channel. Thank you, Dion. What is that? Yeah, I don't even know what that means. Everyone has their own channel. Why am I not allowed to say it? Yeah. So anyway, all right, my fellow atheists, thank you. Dude, you just justify slavery. No, Darren, I didn't. I'm making a different point. That's so funny. You guys have to make these absurd conclusions because let's just agree. We'll just agree to disagree. I'm old enough to remember when you could agree to disagree back in the day. Man, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And let me go back up here and take this off. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Many of you, solid video, bro. Props for the grace and the rebuttals. Appreciate you, my dude. Thank you, Grant. Appreciate you, man. I don't have anything to be offended at. I'm not offended at people who disagree. They can call me names and all of it. Like, why am I offended at that? Like, because if they're right, like, and this is where Pascal's wager comes into play. If atheism is right, if they're true, if all these people who are mocking me are true, then I don't lose anything by living a decent life. Okay, so I didn't allow myself to give in to certain proclivities and things like that. Okay, fine. If atheism, this is where Pascal's wager I think is good. If atheism is right, then why am I, if I live with faith in a God and it's not true, then when I die, nothing happens. I return back to energy or dust or what, depending on your worldview, atheistic worldview. No problem. If it's right and I'm wrong, I lose nothing from it. My children still live decent lives. They still are pretty decent moral people and so forth, right? Like, what does that mean? But if you're wrong though, and Christianity is true and there's meaning in that, then you actually have the bigger problem. So I don't lose. It's not a lose-lose for me. It's not a lose-lose, because I'm not, just like people say, oh, well, how are two men that love each other hurting anyone? How is me believing in faith? How is this video hurting you? Why are you commenting and so upset? It's not hurting anyone. This is just what I believe, and I'll teach my children this and so forth. If I'm wrong, then I don't lose anything from it. But if I'm right and you're wrong, you do. And that's why we make these types of videos, because we hope to persuade. But if you're not persuaded, that's fine. I'm not offended or not. I'm going to keep making YouTube videos unless the Lord says it's time for me to come home, and we'll do that. All right. But thank you so much for your criticisms and critiques. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Make your YouTube channel and tag me. You do this work. You do an hour video talking about what you believe, and make your video. And let's see it. Let's see. All right. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate y'all. Like and subscribe to the channel, or not. We'll see you when we see you.